My name is Emily Carter, and I live in Portland, Oregon, in a quiet suburban neighborhood filled with kind people and blooming gardens. I've been married to Daniel for a little over 5 years now. When we first got married, everyone used to call us the perfect couple. But as time went on, things slowly began to change. At first, I didn't even notice it. Life got busier. Daniel got a promotion, which meant longer hours and more stress. I was working as a freelance interior designer, spending most of my time at home, juggling clients, deadlines, and house chores. Somewhere along the way, the spark between us faded. We weren't fighting, but we also weren't connecting. Meals became silent, hugs became rare, and even our smiles felt forced. He'd come home tired, and I'd already be asleep. And when I'd wake up, he'd already left for work. It was like we were two strangers living in the same house. Then, one morning, my neighbor Michael Evans moved in next door. Michael was a few years older than me, maybe mid-30s, and lived alone. He was quiet, polite, and always greeted people with a warm smile. The first time I met him, I was struggling to carry a box of garden tools to the backyard. He noticed me from across the fence and offered to help. I thanked him, assuming that would be the last interaction. But over the following weeks, he started helping with little things, fixing a broken gate hinge, trimming a tall branch, or watering the plants when I was away. I didn't ask him to. He just noticed when something needed to be done and offered help with no expectation of anything in return. It wasn't long before his small acts of kindness became something I looked forward to. He never said much, but when he did, his words had warmth and sincerity. Unlike Daniel, who had grown distant and distracted, Michael noticed things, like when I had a bad day, or when I looked tired. One afternoon, I was painting my living room walls a pale shade of blue for a new design project. I didn't realize how exhausting it would be until I dropped the roller and sat down on the floor, sighing in frustration. Just then, I heard a knock on the door. It was Michael, holding a cup of iced coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said with a smile. I laughed softly. "How did you know?" Let's just say the sound of a paint roller hitting the floor gave it away. We both laughed, and for a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, genuine care and friendship. He didn't make me feel small for being tired or emotional. He just understood. Over time, we started talking more, about life, work, and things that didn't seem to matter much but somehow felt important. He told me how he'd lost his wife to cancer a few years ago, and how moving to a new place was his way of healing. I could see the quiet pain behind his calm smile, but I also saw strength. His kindness wasn't just an act, it came from a place of empathy. One day, Daniel came home earlier than usual. He saw Michael fixing a section of our backyard fence and frowned. "Why is he always here?" he asked sharply. I froze for a second. "He's just helping with the fence. It was falling apart." Daniel scoffed. "You could have called a repairman." "I didn't need to," he offered. For the first time in years, Daniel and I argued. But deep down, I realized something. It wasn't about Michael. It was about what Daniel had stopped doing a long time ago, noticing, caring, and being present. Later that night, I sat alone on the porch. Michael was in his yard, quietly watering his plants. He noticed me sitting there and said softly, "You okay?" I nodded, but tears rolled down my cheeks anyway. He didn't say anything else. He just handed me a small pot with a blooming white daisy. "They're called new beginnings," he said. "Sometimes we all need one." That daisy changed something inside me. The next morning, I decided to talk to Daniel, really talk. For hours, we sat in silence before I finally spoke. "I miss us," I said quietly. "We've both stopped trying, and I don't want to live like roommates anymore." For the first time in years, Daniel looked at me, really looked at me. "You're right," he said after a long pause. "I've been so focused on work that I forgot why I started working so hard in the first place, for us." It wasn't easy, but the conversation became the turning point. We started spending more time together, cooking dinner, taking evening walks, and just being present. And through it all, Michael remained the quiet friend next door who never crossed boundaries but somehow inspired change in both of us. Months passed. One evening, Daniel and I invited Michael over for dinner as a thank you. As we sat around the table laughing, I realized something profound. Sometimes, it takes a kind stranger to remind you what love truly means. Michael didn't do what Daniel couldn't in a literal sense. He didn't replace him. What he did was show empathy, patience, and attentiveness, things Daniel had forgotten, but could learn again. He taught me that care isn't about grand gestures, it's about small, consistent acts of kindness that bring people back to life. Now, every time I see that white daisy blooming on my windowsill, I smile. Because that flower isn't just a reminder of a neighbor's kindness, it's a symbol of hope, renewal, and the beauty of second chances. Speech balloon moral of the story. Sometimes, it's not love that disappears, it's attention, patience, and effort. And when life gives you someone who reminds you of those things, it's a blessing, not a temptation.